In the first piece of Humanism of the Other, Signification and Sense, I read the first section, Signification and Receptivity. It's about 5 pages long, and I have spent going on 2.5 hours reading this section, these 5 pages. The beginning, the first few paragraphs seem pretty straightforward. Levinas is discussing the difference between reality, as in perception, contents, given. An example he uses is a book. A book has a shape, it has a color, has a certain firmness. These are all things that we sense and perceive as reality. But aside from these physical senses, there's something else to everything, and that is the signification. The signification is the fact that this is a book, that it is read, that it was written. These things, in the beginning, Levinas discusses how they're separate. They're almost a metaphor from the given. So you start with this contents, the given, and you move through metaphor, through signification, to something else that is absent. You have something that is present like this book, but you have so much that is absent. That is, again, who wrote the book? Who's going to read the book? Where is the book? That is all signification. Reality, or sense, receptivity, and signification. Levinas proceeds to discuss how some people approach this idea of receptivity and signification. Mentions Plato and Hume, two philosophers who attribute signification to intuition, to consciousness. So there's something such as a book that we perceive, that we sense, and then our consciousness, our intuition, is able to deduce the signification from what we perceive. So everything falls to this consciousness and this intuition. Levinas then proceeds to discuss probably butcher the pronunciation here, Husserl. This is where my understanding of the work really started to break down. About 1.5 pages in, maybe 5 paragraphs. At first, my understanding was that Husserl differs from Plato and Hume and these also logical positivists in that Husserl takes what you perceive, the givens, the contents, and the signification, the meaning, and sees them as kind of one and the same. That the signification is actually absent givens. So not one and the same, you still have the present and the absent, but the absent are more givens, not some higher meaning, some higher significance. I don't really understand what's going on there, but I allow myself to pass through whether or not I understand Husserl's approach correctly, hoping that I can still get to what Levinas's approach is without fully understanding his. So it proceeds, and Levinas goes on to what I believe talk about how he feels it works, this reality, perception versus this signification. And it seems that Levinas puts a lot of weight on context. And when he talks about context, he talks about language and culture. Really, I get a little confused because he talks about givens and contents and significations in regards to words, in regards to language, and in regards to experience. I believe he's using them all to help paint his picture, but it confuses me a little bit. For instance, when he's talking about words, that's the most simple. He says, words, contents versus signification operate much the same way that words can sometimes be understood within the context of a sentence in which it's used. In the same way, the contents or a given can be understood in the context of where that given is. And that could be in language, that could be in culture. I don't fully understand what this means, but I think this is what he's saying. I think that essentially there's this context, this world, this horizon on which givens and contents rest. They exist within this world, within this realm of language and culture, and in that, as well as something he brings up is the position of the person who is looking, the person who is perceiving, where that person is, and the position of that person, as well as the greater context, the world, the language, the culture. That all leads to essentially signification, I believe. So another piece that he talks about this is this idea of there are no set meanings, set significations for any one thing. So he talks about this idea of words. We might think of them as having a set meaning, a dictionary word, but in reality, the way it is that there is no set signification, no set meaning. It's all dynamic relative to context, to culture, language. Again, I'm BSing a little bit, but I think this is what he's saying. So this idea of there being no frozen literal meaning, and in that sense, there's so much going on, you can't memorize all the significations of everything that exists because they're so complicated and there's so many. So in that way, signification is, and this is where I get confused whether he is saying that this is what Heidegger says or this is what he's saying, but signification comes from language, from thought, from understanding, from analysis. That's where signification comes from. It doesn't come because it's intrinsically tied to some content or some given, but it comes from, and I don't really understand how it comes only from language, but I think it comes from this context, this world, and basically that is what I took from this first 5 pages. I would like to have taken more. I will probably be rereading it a couple more times, certain sections, because I feel a little uncomfortable going on to the next section with such a vague and tentative understanding to what Levinas is talking about in this first section of significance and receptivity. I had hoped that these videos for each section would only be 2 minutes long. This first is going on 10 minutes. I'll do my best to cut them down in the future. That's it for tonight.